Good evening. The Lord's care is enough. Psalm 23 is a psalm full of movement, nor can it be otherwise, for the shepherd and his sheep are constantly on the move, in search of pastures and water. They are on the move all day. He leads them to the green pastures and to the water. They go through the valleys with dark shadow. His goodness and favor follow them, and they return to the house of the Lord. So each of us is also on the way. Our whole life. Life is never completely static. Sometimes we have abundance. Sometimes we lack. Sometimes the road to the water is long and demanding, and sometimes there are even dark valleys we have to go through. And in this movement and uncertainty, the only certain and firmness lies in the shepherd. The consolation is that I walk with my shepherd every day, that he leads me as a shepherd leads his sheep. With him I lack nothing. My care is therefore guaranteed by his presence. He leads me to rest in green pastures. He brings me to water where there is peace. He gives me strength. Without grazing and water, no sheep can survive. The shepherd's primary task is to take his sheep every day to eat and drink, and in this he can skip no day, especially in a semi-desert world of Israel. Grazing and water must be sought after. Sheep cannot just be released to graze on their own. The shepherd must seek, and the shepherd must lead, and the shepherd must bring them to water. It all depends on him. His knowledge, his skills, his experience, his care for his sheep are the determining factors. And so is the Lord. So the Lord has provided himself for his people. So he took care of Jacob and his sons during the famine in Egypt. So he brought manna and quail and water out of the rocks in wilderness. So he gave rain at the right time. So he cared for Elijah through crows. With the same language as in Psalm 23, the restoration of the people from captivity is described. That's from Ezekiel 34, verse 13 to 15. I will bring them out from the nations and gather them from the countries. I will bring them into their own land. I will pasture them on the mountains of Israel, in the ravines and in all the settlements in the land. I will tend them in a good pasture, and the mountain heights of Israel will be their grazing land. There they will lie down in good grazing land, and there they will feed in a rich pasture on the mountains of Israel. I myself will tend my sheep and make them lie down, declares the sovereign Lord. This care would become apparent in the coming of the Good Shepherd Jesus Christ. He who sees hungry crowd and pity them deeply because they are like sheep without a shepherd. Mark 6. He that multiplies 5 loaves and 2 fishes to feed more than 5,000. He brings us into the presence of a Heavenly Father and ensures us that He will take care of us much more than the birds and the lilies. He will give everything that we need. We must believe that the Lord's physical care is and will be sufficient. We must believe it in times of drought and rain. We must believe it in times of promotions at work and in times of job loss. We must believe it for ourselves and for our children and grandchildren. After all, the promise of care in Psalm 23 is a promise of the shepherd himself. The Lord is my shepherd. His care is enough. Good night.